¿Cómo están? Me da mucho gusto arrancar esta cobertura del programa en la Feria Internacional del Libro, como lo hacemos cada año. Y hoy me da mucho gusto arrancar con el premio Phil, con Mircea Cărtărescu, que aunque aquí tengo un libro, la verdad, Mircea, you say you're a poet, basically. That's what you are, even though you haven't written a poem in a long time. But the first question is, you get this enormous award prize in Mexico. What is your relationship with Latin America? You talked about it in your speech, but what has been, in literary terms, your relationship with Latin America, with Mexico? How important has that relationship been?
Extremely important. The first books that really amazed me, that really turned me into pieces, were Latin American books. When I was 17 or 18, I started to read, Carlos Fuentes, for example, Terra Nostra. It destroyed me. I thought it was the very best book I will ever read.
Really?
Yes, I was amazed with this book. It opened my eyes as a very young writer. And then I started to read systematically Latino American writers, Cubanese writers, Argentinian writers, Colombian writers, Mexican writers, all kinds of writers. And in my Areopag, let's say, the main gods are Borges, Cortázar.
Cortázar, I've heard
Yes.
you talk a lot about Cortázar.
Sabato.
And what Cortázar did to your literature, to your poetry, to your writing, and to inspiration.
When I read The End of the Game, for example, or Axolotl, or other stories written by him, I thought that I found a sort of a twin brother, because what he wrote was what I wanted to write. And he influenced me a lot. And one of my most important writings ever, my first book of stories called Nostalgia, actually has his name inside. It was a sort of a reminder of how much I was indebted to him.
In your speech on Saturday, you revindicated poetry. You said, I'm a poet, but you also sounded worried about where poetry is today in the industry, actually in the world, in front of readers. Could you elaborate a little bit more about that? How you see poetry today in the editorial industry, in the minds of people, etc.?
Well, the people talking about poetry are a little bit confused, because poetry has two meanings. A general one, which is very important, but the people forget about it, is that to be a poet is to see things in a certain manner. To be a poet is not mainly to write poems. It's not about writing poems, but about a vision of the world. You know, a little child who has no education or other things that deform us, sees the real lights, the real colors of the world, and has a certain oblique look on the world that we, the adults, lost. What I mean is that each and every child is a poet, but then we lose this huge light of poetry. So real poets are the people who, I don't know why, by a sort of a neoteny, as is the concept in biology, we preserved this capacity of seeing the beauty of the world, even where nobody looks for it, even in garbage, even in things that we despise. But if you are able, when you are 60 or when you are 70, to see the beauty of the world, you are a poet. And
you're a boy in a way still.
Yes.
No, because you always talk about this and how boys and no, are those that see the world
yes.
in a way poets.
From this point of view, I'm very proud that I preserved my childhood, that I didn't grow up, And well, many times the people tell me, well, you must grow up. You behave like an adolescent. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it, and I think I will be always like that.
Well, do you still write by hand?
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes? Because you did it for a long, long time, no?
There is a big part of what I wrote really written by hand, because I love to write by hand. Writing by hand is slow, so literature is the art of slowness, like the art of making love. You don't have to hurry. You have to be slow. You have to be tender. You have to understand everything. You have to caress the page, the white page. So writing by hand enables you to be tender to the page you are feeling with your writing. This is why I love to write by hand. And besides, I am mainly a diary writer. I write diary, personal notes from when I was 16. So I write by hand every day, because you cannot type.
In the mornings, I read an old interview that in the mornings. That's
yes,
I only
write in the morning. After 12 o'clock, I'm only a reader. So I write between 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock every day, or almost every day. And this is because I feel more able to write in the morning. My mind is more clear.
I asked you about your relationship with Latin America, but now I want to ask you, and because I mean you are Romanian, that's a small country in Europe, with a particular language. Mm-hmm. How much of that, you being born there, living there, speaking Romanian at the beginning, how much that influenced your literature? How much that is in the way you do your poetry and your literature and to be there?
Yes, Romania is considered many times a Balkan country, and it is geographically speaking. But spiritually speaking, it's more close to the Latin America than to Europe, in my opinion. And many people say, well, Romania is a sort of a Latin American country which got lost in Europe. Why do I say that? Because we speak a very similar language. Mm-hmm. We inherited, all of us, we inherited the Latin, mm-hmm. the Latin language. And Romanians are not Slavic people like the other around mm-hmm. us.
The Balkans.
We are Latin, like the French, like the Italians, like the Spanish, and so on. So this is the first similarity. Then there is the same huge discrepancy between the rich and the poor. Romania is a country of contrasts, like we see many times here in
Latin America, in Mexico,
Central America and South America. Then we have this propension towards tyrannies, towards dictatorships. We had 4 dictatorships in our recent history, 3 of them fascist dictatorships and 1 of them communist dictatorship, like here. And last but not least, we have a very imaginative literature. Our literature is fantastic literature. Our greatest writers, greatest poets are people who believed in inspiration and in imagination. So we are very, very tempted to read Latin American literature because it's like us.
And the other thing that reading all your interviews in the last years that I discovered is that you have a weakness for real rock and roll, don't you? No, for Dylan and all of that, those poets, no?
Well, like every youngster who was living in the 70s, for example, of course I took a big part of my ideology and my knowledge about what life is from the rock music. The rock music was a huge influence on my generation, which generation were called the blue jeans generation in my country, because we changed the old formal look of the people with the costume and cravat and tie and so on, with the casual, with blue jeans and fancy
and
shirts.
some of them
and so
are
on.
poets, aren't they?
Yes. When I was young, I had very long hair. I was a beatnik. My idols were Allen Ginsberg, Ferlinghetti, Gregory Corso, the beat generation in the States. So I had a very beautiful youth, despite the dictatorship in which I lived. But we had huge rock groups in Romania. They filled stadiums. They had huge popularity, and besides, we loved the Beatles, Bob Dylan,
all of them,
and all of them.
I'm sure you're very proud of what happened with the film. So, what would you tell the Mexican readers that maybe they don't know you that well, because no, the books are, etc. What would you tell them now that you won our biggest award, one of the biggest awards? What would you tell a Mexican reader about why they should buy this book or other book, or the 3 books that do this? What would you tell those Mexican readers?
You know, I'm a really very modest person. I'm not proud of myself
No,
because I wrote the books that I wrote, because writing a book is like giving birth to a child. Any woman can give birth to a child. She can go shopping, or she can do anything, but the child grows in her womb. It was the same feeling that my books were not written; they were given birth. So I think I was made for it. I'm not. There's no reason to be proud. I'm only very grateful for each of my books, and now I'm very happy that they are translated mostly all over the world, and so many more people can read them and enjoy them. I wish all the readers to enjoy them.
And now they can see this kid that you gave birth to. Everybody. Mircea, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mircea Cărtărescu. Este es uno nada más. Hay muchos libros en español ya de Mircea publicados. Un placer tenerlo aquí. Gracias. Hasta luego.